Hey everyone, and welcome to CI Stories, where we talk with everyday teachers about their CI experience in the classroom, because it's not just the gurus who do this, it's us, everyday teachers, who go in the classroom and make magic happen. So today we're going to be talking with Lynne Hendrick in just a moment, but a couple of things I want to talk to you about before we get started. If you don't already know, we have our Comprehended 2025 conference going on right now. If that's something you're interested in, you can still register for a 3, 6, or 3, 6, 9, 12, or 12-month pass. Can't speak today. And let me get that link up on the screen for everybody. So it's at oops, I mistyped it. Let me get that off the screen and fix my typo here. HTTPS comprehended.co. There we go. We also have one of our $7 webinars coming up this Saturday. You can still register for $7. And let me get you that one. That's for goal setting and working with assessments. And we put that one up on the screen as well. It's at mm.us/goals. And our last thing we have going on, it opened up officially on April 1st, but you're still welcome to join, is our advanced CI class, our our Beyond the Basics class. That is at mm.us/beyond. That is 10 pre-recorded classes, so you can watch at your leisure. You have them for access to for a whole year. So if that's something you're interested in, you can register right there. Now, with that, we're going to go ahead and move on and speak with Lynne. Lynne is a German teacher from the Virginia Beach, Virginia area. And then I'm going to let her give you a little bit of introduction about her background, and then we'll go ahead and get started. If you have questions, remember, as always, go ahead and just type them in the comments. Or if you are watching the chat in the chat, excuse me, and if you're watching in the comments, you can put them in the comments if you're watching it on the replay. So go ahead and do that for us, and let's move on to Lynne. Welcome, Lynne. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started.
So I teach German, all levels at the high school level in Chesapeake, Virginia, a public school, a fairly high needs school when it comes to socioeconomics. Um, and I don't know, I have two children, both in college, and an accidental exchange student this year.
Oh, awesome. How long have you been teaching?
This is It's complicated because I taught, then I took time off, and now I'm teaching again. So I'm around 20 to 22 years.
So about the same as I think this is my 23rd year teaching.
Yeah.
23rd year. And have you always been a CI teacher, or did you start
No,
later on?
I did. Like I think many people who went to school in the mid 90s, my education in teaching languages was not the best at the college level. And I'd never heard of comprehensible input probably for the first, I don't know, 10 to 15 years that I was out of college and in the classroom. Um, and so I got a postcard in the mail at the school I was teaching at that was from Blaine Ray, come to this 2-day workshop. And I showed it to the person that I was sharing my classroom with at the time. And she's like, wow, that really looks like something you would do well at. We should go together. So we did. So, yeah, but I was a very, traditional get through chapter 4 in this textbook and then move to the, very traditional teacher before that because that's the only thing I knew. I
Yeah.
hadn't known anything else.
Yeah, I got lucky. I learned about CI right at the end of my first semester of teaching, and I sucked at teaching in the first semester because I was doing it from the textbook, the way I was taught. And I really didn't learn any of the languages that I learned. I did not learn actually from the textbook. I faithfully did the textbook, but we all have other ways that we learn. We didn't actually learn from the textbook itself. So I did that. I was boring, and I was bored. They were bored, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this for the next 30 years doing this. And so then I knew something had to change. So I found Blaine Ray, like something, like you, but I didn't get to go to a workshop until the summer. So I just bought the books, and at the time, we have a CI Facebook group now, but before that, we had a YouTube, not you, a Yahoo group, and that's what we were on. So that's where I got all the information because Facebook groups weren't a thing back then. And I just grabbed everything that I could and struggled until I got that training during the summer. But something that you kind of made me think of a few years ago, I did a training in I want to say it was Nashville. I know it was Tennessee, but I can't remember if it was Nashville or Memphis, but I think it was Nashville. And I had two German teachers come in. And my German is very rusty, so I always get a little nervous when I do, because I do my demos in German. I don't do them in Spanish because everybody knows Spanish or can pick it up so easily, so they don't really feel the effect. And I knew I was going to have a problem because we had a more senior teacher who is on the verge of retiring, but the young new teacher wanted to go, so she dragged her along. But my question word posters, I had them up there in German, and they weren't capitalized. And she says, "Why aren't they before we started, why aren't they capitalized?" I'm like, they're not in a sentence. They're just words. They're not normally capitalized
Mhm.
unless they're not a noun and they're not a first word in a sentence. It's just there. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a really bad experience. So we went through the thing, and after the training, it was a 2-day training, and she said to me, she goes, "This is incredible." And she said, "I was ready to retire. I had one more year left, and I'm tired of the kids. I'm tired of teaching. I want out." And she goes, after this, she goes, "I think I've got like 3 or 4 more years in me now." And she went back and did it. And like all of us in the beginning, did it poorly. We all do it poorly in the beginning. It takes us many years to get comfortable with it. But she said, she kept emailing me all the time, and she says, "I don't know what I'm doing. The school district wants me to come back and teach it to other teachers, and I don't even know what I'm doing yet." And it was just a really good experience. But I don't know if she's retired yet. It's got to be by now. Because I know she wanted to retire, but it did give her a couple more years. It gave her an extra life because it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
Because she was a very strict, and she was not only a German teacher, she was German. So comes from that, the really strict background, the really grammar focused background.
Those
And
are the tough ones for me to turn, are the native speaking German teachers.
yeah,
When I try to get people to engage in CI in some way, those are the ones that resist the most. But like reflecting back on my journey, I had been looking. I had been looking for something different my entire teaching career. And I was trying to bring different things into the classroom. Um, I just didn't know how to do it and where to go with it. But by the time I had went to this weekend seminar that I went to, I had started introducing units by bringing in things. And so, like for the travel unit or the clothing unit, I would just pack a suitcase full of my clothes, my husband's clothes, my kids' clothes, all different crazy stuff mixed together. And I was like, hey guys, I'm going on a trip. I want you to tell me where I'm going as I show you the stuff. And I would pull it out and start talking about it and so I was pushing my way to CI, but I didn't know what it was or what to do next. And so, yeah, being exposed to those 2 days of training. And then by the time I was into it, the Facebook group was there instead of the Yahoo group, and just pooling as much information in the blog posts and all of that. I think I still have a binder downstairs where I was printing stuff and putting it in the binder so I could flip through it really fast and find what I wanted. And
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But I realized that my entire career I was trying to find this.
yeah. You know, it's
Yeah.
funny you talk about that clothing. I did something similar, not exactly like you did. My second year of teaching, and I made, second year of teaching, so you're still very wet behind the ears. Even after 10 years, you're wet behind the ears. Um, but I made the biggest faux pas. It was hilarious. It was a funny faux pas, but it was a faux pas because I didn't look. What I had the kids do is bring in clothes, donate clothes, and we threw them into a pile in the middle of the classroom. Now, I did not check the clothes to begin with. I didn't think to check them. My second year of teaching, I did not think of all the mischievous things that kids would do, right? I just didn't have that forethought. And I didn't have kids, so I didn't know what kids were capable of. So we did this and we were playing a game. So we had two teams, and I would call out an article of clothing, and the first person who put on the article of clothing got the point. So I made sure there was at least, that we had enough articles to do that, and that it didn't have to go on where it was supposed to go on. It just had to be on the body. It couldn't just be hanging on the body. It had to be on. So, you could put a pair of pants on your head. I didn't care, but they had to be on, they had to be on. So I get down to, we had a vocabulary word in the textbook because I had to teach the textbook. Ropa interior, which is underwear, interior clothing. And so we had some underwear in there, and I guess this kid brought a tidy whities in, which, okay, not that big of a deal, but I didn't know that he had rubbed chocolate on them. So we get this, and the kid who put it on didn't know either. And
No.
he put it on backwards and inside out. So we saw the chocolate, and he did not see the chocolate, and he's got it on his head. And we are just laughing hysterically because it looks like he's got the bathroom streak right across his face. And it was hilarious. It was fun. It was hilarious. We got our laughs out of that, but that was just a little fun game that we played way back when. That was like 2002. It was a long time ago.
Yeah. That would be fun to do though.
Yeah, it helped him learn the stuff, and it was a little more tangible because when I
Yeah.
started with CI, we didn't have all the activities that we have now. We did not have picture talk, we did not have movie
Mhm.
talk or clip chat. We did not have, embedded reading. None of that stuff existed. So we had to create things. Otherwise, we were doing the stories every single day. And when I started, there were 7 steps to doing that. And I can't remember all the steps, but I remember in the middle, you had to tell the same story because we didn't have circling or anything back then, the same story 3 different times to get the repetitions in. And it was hard to keep the kids engaged when it's the exact same story with no variation 3 times in a row. And we went through the 7 steps, and every day we had to go through all 7 steps. That was the goal, and it was like a sprint trying to get through them. So we looked for other things to vary things up, and all we
Mhm.
had for novels was like Pobriana or Arma An, and that's all we had way back then. We didn't have anything else to work with, and they were all Blaine Ray novels, and nothing really happened in them because he keeps them very tame.
Yeah.
um, and so, kids would get bored of them, and I would get bored. I think I did Pobriana for like 7 or 8 years, and I know it by heart by now, and I can't teach it again. It's just I've expanded beyond that, but amazing. What year was it that you started CI?
I'm trying to think. Probably 2012, maybe 13.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So definitely the Yahoo group was gone at that time because Yahoo killed
Yeah.
their groups, but we were all on there. And
Mhm.
the problem with the Yahoo groups, you couldn't search. You tried to
Yeah.
search and you couldn't find it, but it was very active, and people would, you had 2 ways. You can either go to the site and get it, or get the emails, or get a
Mhm.
digest. And I said, don't get the daily emails, because at the beginning of the school year you'd get hundreds of emails a day. I
Yeah.
did the daily emails, but I filtered them into a folder so I didn't have to see them, but then I can search them easier in my Gmail than I could from the on the list itself when I was looking for something, because that was our only social media. There were not blogs back then. There was YouTube did not exist back then. So we were
Mhm.
really, that was our only real source of real human contact with things that we're doing. So
Yeah,
yeah, very different from now. We've got so many resources.
thankfully, right?
Yes, exactly. So many different things we can do now. Since you talked about your journey, what was your toughest challenge that you faced, or did you have a challenge that you faced when you switched over?
Um, excuse me, getting over a little cold over here. Um, I think one challenge was my own confidence, building my own self-confidence and feeling like I could do this and this was sustainable and it was something that I could continue with and grow into. But as a singleton teacher, my other big challenge was I don't just teach one level. I don't even teach two levels. I teach all the German every year. Thankfully, our year is split by the semester, so I was never teaching more than three levels at one time. But that was a really big challenge, especially as I was transitioning into CI. Um, a lot of, all my kids come back to me. And so I had to be very strategic in how I introduced it and when I introduced it. And there was one group that I just knew I wasn't going to introduce it to because they were not the group that was going to be receptive to it. And I knew that they were going to give me the most pushback. And so instead of transitioning them all the way to CI, I just gave them elements and I kept the routine of the textbook. I kept the routine of the grammar, but I gave them elements of the CI to kind of supplement and work it in there and give myself more practice.
Yeah,
And I also made for me, the very wise decision to only transition one course at a time. So I started with my German 1 course because that was the natural place to
yeah,
start. And I taught my German 1 course in the fall, and I worked really hard on that course and those lesson plans. And then for the other 2 courses, I just recycled my lesson plans from the year before so that I didn't have to think so hard in those classes. And I would supplement things in for them that were more CI based. And then second semester, many of those ones became my twos. And so I transitioned that level two into CI. So now I had level one and two running in CI. The following year, I was then able to take those twos and transition them into my level three class. Um, and so it became a natural progression for both me and the students. It was less taxing on me personally, because at that time I had little kids, they were elementary age, and I was needed at
yeah,
home.
yeah,
My husband would give me Sundays every weekend. He would take them and do something on Sundays. So the house was quiet and I could work the whole day on, what I was going to do that next week just for one class.
yeah,
But it was also 90-minute classes, and that's a challenge. A
yeah.
90-minute class is a long time to keep them engaged, and to keep the rigor and up. They kind of peter out there here and there. So I think those were my major challenges were
And,
that,
you mentioned
yeah.
about the two things I want to mention hit on. One, you said you scaffolded it in, and I had a French teacher that I worked with at a school, and she was close to retirement, and she was all on board with CI, but she goes, "I'm too close to retirement. I'm just not going to change. I've got a few years left. I'm not going to change." But the rest of us, the Spanish, the Japanese, and the German teacher, were all CI. She was the French teacher, and she was not. And she just said, "I'm just too close. I'm not going to do it." Well, fine. I don't know what made her push over the edge, and she goes, "Fine, I'll do it next year. I'll start with my ones, and I'll try to scaffold it in." So she did it with her ones, and like you, she taught all the subjects, and it was a year-long program. So she taught 1 through AP all in the same. So she had all the preps. I think the 3-4 was mixed together, and then so she had, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then AP. And she's like, she started it, and then the other kids got jealous, like, why don't we get to have all that fun? And she's like, I wanted to streamline this in, and I can't now. She had to go all hog in, and she goes, that was a lot for her. Um, but one of the things I know, because normally with Spanish, we have a lot of Spanish teachers, and so usually we only have to teach 2 preps per year or per semester, however
Mhm.
the school goes. Um, and last year I taught level 1, level 1B, which is for the challenging kids who didn't pass level 1, and then level 2 and level 3. So I had 4 preps. Four preps out
Mhm.
of 6 classes. So we taught 6 out of 7 classes, and I had 4 preps. And one of the things that I did that worked really, really well, and what I think CI lends itself really easily to compared to the textbook, where with the textbook, it seems like there's more work because you'd have to do at least 4 different lesson plans for that, with covering different pages in the textbook. Well, with CI, what I did is we were doing a movie talk. I picked this, used the same video for everybody. I just kept it really easy for level 1 and moved my way up to level 3 using different structures and stuff like that in there. And when we did a story, it was the same thing. I had the same plot for my story. I just, ratcheted it up for my level 3s and kept it simple for my level 1s. And so that helped my sanity because I could do parallel every day. I wasn't coming up with a different story every day. It was the same story. It was just how I treated that story was different. So that saved my butt because I don't think I could have done it if I was textbook and had to do 4 different
Mhm.
lesson plans based off 4 different chapters, based off 4 different pages of the textbook. That would have been a lot of work to prep for. Whereas here, I really only prepped 1 lesson plan and just changed up the questions that I asked and how in depth I went with them, which made life a lot easier.
Yeah, I'm still doing a lot of prep because we have thematic units that I need to follow, and the textbook is just a resource that we're supposed to use. But I've got to cover the different themes, and so that still adds into my prep work now. But it's easier now because I have the experience and the background, and I've been able to gather resources and different things. And so I have more to pull from rather
From
than making everything.
yeah,
So that
this
makes it
is
easier.
for me. This is the first year I had to go back to the textbook. I haven't taught with a textbook for since my first 4 years of teaching. So I've been in a CI school ever since. This year, I'm not in a CI school. I'm the only one who does it. Um,
Wow.
and we have to cover so many chapters. We're on the semester plan like you, so we change
Mhm.
at the semester. They always are optimistic about how many chapters that they can cover. They say 4, but they only cover 2, which gives me a lot of leeway because I've already covered the 2 that I'm supposed to cover. And what I've done is I don't even pull the textbook out. I'm supposed to check it out for the kids. I don't. They've
Mhm.
never seen it. We also have an online version, so if we ever need it, they can go on the online version. But I'm not checking out the physical books. Not doing it. So, how I incorporate that in there, I do what I'm going to do anyway. But then I have made my own scope and sequence of all the vocab, which so much of it is useless, and there's so much vocab. But I just
Yeah.
put them in the stories, usually in the readings. So I'll just put them in the readings in there, and that's how I kind of
Mhm.
get that in. And then when we have a midterm or a final, right that week before, I will pull out the workbook activities and we'll just work together on the workbook activities. We've already hit all that grammar through stories, but now we're just
Mhm.
going to hit it like it's going to be on the midterm because the midterm is very textbooky. So
Yeah.
I do that with them, and then they're like, ooh, these readings and speaking and stuff, I was really easy in the textbook. I'm like, yeah, because I've been doing CI with you. You guys are way up here, and all the quizzes are much harder than the midterm is
Yeah.
because I do a lot more. The midterm has got like little readings this big, with 6 sentences in there. I'm like, no, my readings are 300 words. So, there's a lot more. So those but then the grammar parts are more tricky for them. So,
Mhm.
but that's how I've had to meld it. So I have those thematic units like you, but since
Yeah.
I've only got to teach 2 chapters, I keep asking, "Where are you?" They're like, "We're still in chapter 1." I'm like, "That's fine with me." So I have
Yeah.
time to do a novel and stuff like that because I've already taught what's on the final exam before the midterm.
Mhm.
So now I've got the
There you go.
rest of the semester to we're going to read a novel after spring. We have spring break after next week. When we come back, we're going to read a novel that should take us a
Mhm.
couple of weeks to do. We can have some more fun and levity that's with that kind of stuff. But yes, the textbook thematic units can be daunting. Like my kid always
Thank
said,
you.
he goes, "Why are we learning computer class? I am never going to use that word in Spanish." And I'm like, I don't blame you. I am with you
Yep,
there, but I gotta
right?
at least cover it. Gotta at
Mhm.
least cover it. So awesome, awesome. Now, before we started, we talked about another class that you teach. So I
Mhm.
want you to talk about that because it is amazing. I was so impressed by hearing about that. So tell us about that class and what it is and how you came up with it and all the good stuff about it.
So you were talking about how the French teacher and the German teacher
Yeah.
were reinvigorated by CI, and I
Yeah.
was too when I started CI. But this class that I had the privilege of designing and piloting and teaching has given me so much joy and so much just genuine satisfaction with teaching that it's really reinvigorated me. And we call it adapted world language and culture. And we are working with the most disabled students in our building, the ones who are in isolated classrooms for most of their day. They're in Virginia, they're earning what is called the applied diploma. So it's not even an academic diploma. And we are working with them to learn language and culture. So I'm working with them on German, and we do little bits of German. I try to keep it very basic. So instead of teaching them my name, I am called Ich heiße, which is what Germans will use. I've chosen to go with Ich bin, I am, because I can go so much farther with I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then we intersperse the German with um, culture from around the world. And I have kind of based the curriculum on the holidays because with the major holidays, we visit Christmas in 4 or 5 different countries. We visit Carnival in 4 or 5 different countries. And so the purpose is to get them acquainted with the fact that there is so much more out in the world than just our little town in our state of Virginia in the United States of America, and to give them an enriching, exciting experience, and to really kind of push them a little bit academically. Most of them are reading, but most of them are only reading at maybe a fourth grade level is the highest. I've got some students that I've worked with who are nonverbal. One of the girls uses a retina reading device to communicate, and she's still learning how to use it. So
Yeah.
it wasn't real productive some days, but other days it was pretty productive. But it's just been joyful because they come in every day wanting to know what we're going to do and sucking it up and learning. And it takes us longer to learn language, but if you know a language, you can learn other languages. And it really, from an instructing standpoint, it's reinforcing all of the CI that I have ever learned. Go slow has a whole different meaning
Yeah.
when it takes 2 weeks to learn 1 to 10. Go slow has a whole different meaning when where I'm teaching them some classroom commands so that they can do things in the classroom. And it's a lot of Germlish.
Yeah.
I did the March Music Madness with them and they loved it. They had so much fun. But every day I would using raise your hand to vote. Doesn't work for this group because they
Yeah.
just raised their hand both times.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, I like that one too. I can't make up my mind. So I had to do little paper ballots for them. So I just did paper ballots for everybody. But every day I would hand them, and I would say, here's your paper, right? In German, here's your paper, here's your pencil. And then when we were collecting them every day, it was, give me your pencil, give me your
Hmm.
paper. And we did that for every day in March. And so guess what they can do now, right?
Yep.
But it's brought so much joy to me. We just recently learned about Holi in India, the color festival. And I was like, guys, we're going to create a display for the hallway so that other kids can learn. And we did. We learned about it. We created artwork. We learned how to dance. We looked at the food, but there were too many food issues in the room to bring
Yeah.
any in because we're talking serious food issues.
Yeah.
And so we created a display and we did it together. And we what's important to tell other people and so I was really testing their critical thinking skills and they're just a joy to work with every day. And the
And
classes are teeny tiny. I had 9 last semester. I have 4 this semester.
that's awesome. And you point out something that was so true. When people say they can't learn a language, I say you're absolutely right. You can't. And no human has ever learned a language. Have we
Mhm.
learned about a language? We have. But almost everybody on the planet can acquire a language to some extent, unless you have some kind of severe brain issue that's going on, whether it be a traumatic brain injury or you were born with some kind of issue in there. Because even our most severely disabled, mentally disabled children have learned to communicate in their first language, whatever it might be. They may not be able to verbalize, like you said, they're non-communicative. We had one who had like remember those speak and play kind of things back
Mhm.
when I'm old. So we had the thing called Speak and Say. You could go and it was little games. Well, he's got something similar to that where he's got different pictures and he pushes the
Mhm.
picture and it says a word or a sentence or something so he can communicate because he can't vocalize, but he understands language and he knows what he wants to say. So saying that our kids, no matter how severely disabled they might be, and I like to use the word differently abled rather than
Mhm.
disabled because
Yes.
they have other skills that they're really good at, and we all have skills that we aren't good at. So
Mhm.
that these children, these special needs children, can learn a second language because they were able to. I'm not learn, excuse me, acquire a second language because they were able to acquire their first language. And I
Yeah,
know when
my
I first started teaching, since it was a textbook school, most of those kids can't learn that way from a
yeah.
textbook that wrote memorization. So the counselors kept putting all the special needs kids in my class because the way we were doing it, they were learning and having good
Yeah.
grades and being successful. And I think they
Mhm.
actually bordered on the legality of it because I think there's a certain number that you're allowed to have in your class before you actually need an extra person in the room. And I think that they violated that. They did not put, I didn't have any of the severely differently abled children in there, but I had enough of the ADHD, learning disability, all those types
Mhm.
of kids in there where I had like sometimes 2/3 of my class would be that. And normally, if it was a regular ed class, they would have had an assistant in there to help them through.
Mhm.
I never got one of those, but I loved
That's
those
the beauty of
kids.
this that's the beauty of the class I'm teaching is I always have at least 1 TA. So
Yeah.
that's lovely. But yeah, like you were saying, I had, some children with autism whose verbal communication was severely limited. I had one young lady for 2 semesters who, has cerebral palsy, is in a wheelchair, and she was using the retinal scanner device, much like that tapping device you
Yeah.
were describing, to communicate in English. And we had yes, no cards. And so I would give her yes, no, either or, um, choices in German and she was demonstrating that, yes, in fact, she was understanding the language and she was acquiring the language because her responses
Yeah.
were completely appropriate. I have the sweetest boy this semester who is in, we call it cross cat. So it's the kids that have multiple disabilities, cross categorical disabilities. So it's the most severely impacted students are in those rooms. And that's the room he's in. And he's the one who's learning and retaining the most language, which is astounding. The third week of class, because every day we do today is, yesterday was, and tomorrow will be. And that's how we do the days of the week in my German 1 and German 2 class. That's how
I
we
do.
do the
Yep.
days with them.
Same here.
He comes in the third week of class and he says to me, Mrs. Frau Hendrick, happy Tuesday. And I said, what? And he said, happy Tuesday. And I said, well, happy Tuesday to you too, because his brain was acquiring the language and picked up the pattern that in German, every day of the week except for Wednesday ends with Tag, T A G.
Yeah.
And he didn't know the first part of Tuesday, but he knew that it was going to end in Tag. And that to me was 100% acquisition and 100% of building that mental map that Bill Van Patten talks about,
Yeah.
right? And now he comes in and he says to me, "Today, heute is Tuesday, is Dienstag. Morgen, tomorrow is," and meanwhile he's stimming and doing all of his autism things, which are astounding to watch. But and he's still communicating with me, and it's just amazing. And I think the funniest thing is one of the kids in there who's on the higher end ability wise was kind of not really paying attention a lot. And now he is actually paying more attention because he couldn't do what this other kid could do. And he wanted to do what this other kid was able to do, because he clearly knew that this other kid had more difficulties than he did. So it's kind of funny.
And I don't think, and you're proving it, that we don't give credit to what the kids can actually do.
Yeah.
And this isn't just for kids with disabilities. It's all kids. A lot, like I remember one time, I was trying to teach, I needed to teach a bigger citizenship lesson to this child. This child did not respect, anything. And so, and my assistant principal says, that's not our job. And I'm thinking, that's more important than the subject I teach, is to teach them how to be good citizens. And he goes, they're just children. And I'm like, we don't give them credit enough for what goes on. And I can remember when I was a kid and the things that I was thinking about at those different ages and stages. And, it's just the credit that they were giving was not the same as, oh, they're just children. No, they have thoughts and ideas and solutions to problems, and they can
Mhm.
do things well beyond what we put upon them for their age. And so with the special needs kids, it's amazing. He's
Yeah.
doing exactly what Bill Van Patten talks about. He's making that map in his head, and it's coming in pieces. But you know what? Apple
Mhm.
Maps came in pieces. It was a disaster when it started. It used to have
Yeah.
people drive right off bridges because the street would just stop right at the end. But you know what? It takes time, and we develop, and eventually it's going to get there. They learned English or whatever their first language is, they can
Mhm.
learn a second language given the opportunity and the time. And I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing. And it
Thank
should
you.
actually be incorporated into more schools. It shouldn't
Yeah.
just be. It's such a great thing. And it gives those kids a sense of accomplishment as well. And as you told me, a lot of these kids are going to be in the service industry when they
Mhm.
graduate. And you know what? We, regardless of what people think right now, we are still a multilingual nation. And people light up when you can speak in their own language, even
Yeah,
if it's just the basics, saying hello or goodbye or nice to meet you or my name is. Just those things tell that person that, number one, you respect them, you respect where they come from, and you are welcoming them to whatever they're doing. And I think that's
absolutely.
so important. And I love this.
Mhm.
Absolutely, absolutely love this idea.
It's amazing, and, like, they're teaching me. They are really pushing me to be a better teacher and pushing me to think outside the box and to think beyond, my normal thought process in a classroom. They're pushing me to be more creative, but they're also reminding me of things because many of these kids don't have the same type of filter that other teenagers have.
Wait,
Uh,
teenagers have filters?
like, well, when they want them.
Yeah.
So, like, last semester, I had a boy whose mom brought him in during the open house, which we did the week before school started. And she's like, "Oh, I don't know how this is gonna go because he really is very resistant to new things and different things, and I just don't know how this is gonna go." And I just smiled and I said, we're gonna make the best of it. We're gonna see how it goes. He's gonna have fun. I promise you. I'm gonna make him feel safe and secure in this classroom. It's gonna be okay." And for the first, I don't know how many weeks, he literally sat sideways and would glance at me and mostly looked at the back of the room. And the first time that I asked him to try to say something in German, he scrunched down and kind of hid. And I heard him say really quietly, "German is scary. German is scary. I don't want to. This is scary." And I thought to myself, how many of our students have sat in our classrooms and said, math is scary,
Hmm.
science is scary, Spanish is scary, English is scary in their head, but not out loud?
Yeah.
How many of them think that almost daily? But we don't know because their filters, see, they do have filters, keep that inside, and it comes out as the kid who's always sleeping or the kid who's always, um, you know, resistant or resentful or upset or angry or whatever. The kid who's always talking to their friend. Is it that they're just scared?
Yeah.
You know? So that really kinda makes you rethink a whole lot when you're working with these kids.
And as you said earlier to me, I don't remember if you said it right now with us or when we were talking beforehand, but you had to really focus on the basic skills of CI,
Yeah.
which we need to do in all of our classes. You can take what
Mhm.
they're teaching you, that you have to go slower and you have to be more animated and you have to point more often and do those kinds of things. Those are just good teaching skills that you can bring back to your regular classroom, because we
Yes.
forget that. I mean, I always forget I taught level 3 for a while, and I haven't taught level 1 for quite a while. It's been a few years. So when I'm teaching level 1 now, the kids say I speak too fast because I'm not used to. And even always the beginning of the year, always I would speak no matter what level faster because I would be speaking at the level I ended last year at and forgot to slow down again.
Yeah.
And you don't really realize. And when you think
Mhm.
you're going slow, you're like, if I say this any slower, I'm going to go bored. And you like, the other kids are like, you aren't saying it slow enough. It really does
Yeah.
um, make a difference. And that's why I always say, I mean, CI, anybody can teach it, with CI, but I've always said that it must be really, really hard for native speakers to teach their own language through CI, because I don't know if I could go in English and go, there is one, two, one, two, boy, one, two, his, one, two, name, one, two, is, one, two, Freddie. Where you have to go really slow. That would
Mhm.
drive me crazy. It's easier in a language that is not my first language.
I
But
agree.
if it were English, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could keep my sanity. I really don't, because it's so slow. And I always make jokes because in Spanish, everybody thinks they speak fast. They really don't speak any faster than English. It's just the way that they put the words together. English and German put microseconds between each word. We don't slur words together as much. Where Spanish, they slur the words together and they only stop and put a space between a word when they need to breathe. That's when they do it. So a lot of words come out as one word when really they're like four words strung together. And we always made a joke that Cubans rarely need to breathe because Cubans are the fastest of all speakers. They speak so fast, they leave out letters. And when I taught native speakers, my Mexican kids would say, they're not allowed to read anymore because we've got the book in front of us and they read it in like zero point 0.4 seconds, the whole page. And we're still on the first paragraph because we just can't keep up with their speed because they read so fast. So I just couldn't imagine a Cuban teacher trying to slow it down and actually pronouncing every letter because they aspirate, S's and R's. They leave them out completely.
Mhm.
And in Germanic languages, it's still done, but to a lesser extent. And we do have
Yeah.
that micro pause between every word. We don't slur our words together. And French is even worse. They write it with the slurs in there. They write the slurs right in. They leave out vowels in their writing so they're not there. Spanish keeps all the vowels in there in their writing, but they'll slur them in the speech. Like an example that kids always talk about, mijo and mija. That's two words in Spanish. But because the first word and the second word both one ends and one starts with the same sound, they get squished together as one sound. It's really mi hija and mi hijo, but the me and the e all squished together as one sound. So they think it's much faster, but I just think those are some basic skills that class is teaching you that you can bring back. And
Right?
like we always,
It's reminding me of what, like you said, good, solid teaching is. And it's because you have to go that slow. You
yep,
have to repeat that many times. You have to have the repetition built in, or there's no growth. And that it's what they need, and so you have to give it. And it has, it has kind of influenced my other classes. Um, I notice without thinking about it, I am slowing down and I am doing more of the repetition and things of that nature with my other classes as well. But they're just more fun too because when they like fun and silly things. And some of my I teach in a lower income school, and so sometimes those kids have had to grow up way too fast
yeah.
and they have a hard time being kids and being silly. But these kids don't. These kids love being silly and having fun and brain breaks. They love them. They'll do any brain break I
Yeah.
want.
That is, especially with high school, I have to take 2 or 3 weeks just to get them comfortable enough class to do some of the goofy stuff that we do. Um,
Mhm.
and so it's really nice when you go into a class with special needs kids, they'll always do the goofy stuff. They don't have those inhibitions that high school
Nope.
kids do. And I had to like front load my kids. So like before I got them in the semester, so the last couple of weeks of the previous semester, I'm emailing. I'm a weird teacher. I'm letting you know we're going to do some crazy things in here and I'm going to expect you to do them. I need you to scream when we sing and we're going to do a lot of weird things. It's going to make you feel uncomfortable. I said, but all of us are doing them together. We're all going to look like fools together. If I can do it at
Mhm.
54, you can do it at 15. The first rule of being a teacher is leave your dignity at the door, all those kinds of things. And it took a couple of weeks, but my kid's like,
Yeah.
"You are weird. You really are." And I'm like, "I warned you. It wasn't like it's a surprise. I told you." We come into class, and now I got my kids doing a lot of the
Mhm.
crazy things. We stand when we sing. They have to sing loud and proud, or I deduct points. I go, if I'm not hearing complaints from the next teacher, you're not doing it right. And I go and I sing, and just like them, I break my my voice crack. I make my voice crack so it sounds just like them hitting puberty. I'm like, believe me, I know you can't sing as good as I can. And I'm like, I am like the most horrible singer ever. So it's, but we have a lot of fun. And when you can break down those barriers, it does make
Mhm.
class easier. And it
Yeah.
also helps them acquire language, because one of the barriers I know with my German was self-consciousness. You don't have the
Mhm.
confidence. And my German teacher in college was amazing, absolutely amazing. But what she did that hindered all of us from speaking is we never finished a sentence without her interrupting us to fix the ending on the verb, or fix the adjective ending, or rephrase our verb. So none of us wanted to speak because we couldn't get anything out edgewise, because she always would correct us. But she
Yeah.
always spoke in German, the whole class, even in German 1 in college. And so we all learned to understand and then read. And when I took German literature classes, a lot of it was in the old High German and old Low German. And so we'd have to read it in that language. Then she translated it to modern German. So we learned a heck of a lot. But the speaking part, we had no confidence. And she wasn't trying to, embarrass us or anything. It's just traditional teaching is, don't let them make a mistake. Fix the
Yeah.
mistake right away so they don't repeat it. But we kept repeating the
Mhm.
mistakes anyway because they weren't getting acquired into our brains. So
Well,
that
and
and
language
that's
is developmental, and part of that developmental step in German is adjective endings and articles and how those change and all of that, and verb endings, I mean, English is so lazy when it
yeah,
comes to verb endings that in any language, it's a struggle to get them to understand, oh, the verb changes every time.
yeah. I mean, they always say, the Germans always told me that if you take away all the rules from German, you're left with English. And
That yeah.
that's pretty true, because we took away all the rules. We simplified, and English is still hard for a lot
Yeah.
of people because of all the different languages that make up English.
Mhm.
And German
Yeah.
is just very logical in everything that it does. But like in Spanish, I use a lot of teachers still, especially their textbook, if we have, the stem changes just like in German. um and if they don't usually stem change in first person in Spanish, so the kids will still say, like, it's supposed to be tango, but they'll say tieno, because you add an o to the end to make it I. And
Mhm.
the rest of the verbs are tiene and, tienen. So they do this, and then they harp on it, make an error. But then a native speaker said to me once, he goes, our children make that same mistake. They learn to add the o to the end of a verb to make
Mhm.
it mean I, and they overgeneralize it to all the verbs. And they have to get to that step before they can get to the irregularity of the verb. And
Yeah.
so I stopped harping on it. And I tell my fellow teachers, stop harp. That's actually a good thing. It's showing they're acquiring the language, and they're assimilating that roadmap of their brain
Mhm.
of how the language works. And we don't want to stunt that growth, because they need to go there to get to the irregularity of that verb eventually. And without that, step in there, it's a step, it's a bridge. Without it
Yeah.
there, they can't make that jump from this and then go straight to the irregularity of the verb. They've got to go through that
Mhm.
step. Just like there's no American, anybody who learned English never, ever, ever went straight from I go to the bathroom to I went to the bathroom. They
I
always
go.
had to go goed in between.
Mhm.
And one thing I love about Bill Patton, what he said, and it makes so much sense, he says, everybody who acquires a language, the same language, whether it's their first language, their second, or their 15th, they all go through the same stages. So every English acquirer has made that mistake to go goed before they said went. He
Mhm.
says the only difference between if it's your first language or your 15th is how long you stay in those stages. Because if you come from a language that has verb conjugations where English does not, you understand that a little bit better than someone
Mhm.
from English who doesn't have them does. So a
Yeah.
German learning French is easier because they go, oh, we do it this way, so do the French. English goes, we don't do it this way. And so any language that has conjugations in it makes it a little bit harder. So we stay a little bit
Mhm.
longer in that phase where a German to French or a Spanish to German would be in that conjugation phase shorter because they already understand the concept of it. It's something they
Yeah.
already have in their
Yeah.
language already.
Yeah, yeah, and I love, I think it was Bill Van Patten that has the U shaped curve where, if when you first learn it, you're up at the top of the U and you do it right because you're
Mm-hmm.
really paying attention and you're trying to do it right because you just learned it and you really want to do it right. But then as you get more confident, you kind of fall down into that bottom of the U and you're making all these mistakes and I goad and I
Yep.
sawed and all of that, but then you start coming up back up the other side of that U as you're acquiring that skill and you're acquiring that chunk of language until you get back to the top of the U where you're doing it right the majority of the time.
Yep.
And for me as a teacher, understanding that, which nobody had taught me in college
No.
when I took my methods course, nobody taught me about second language acquisition. And it makes no sense to me why nobody thought that was something that I might need to know. But as a teacher, when I watch my students understand something and be able to do it and then fall into that abyss, I don't have to say to myself anymore, what did I do wrong?
Yep.
Why didn't they learn it? I did something wrong. I've taught that so many times. They should know that. I can, with some confidence, continue giving them that input. And hopefully, in the course that they're with me, they come back up that U and they come to the other side of that U, or at least they're making progress back up the other side of that U-shaped abyss.
Yep.
Because that's, I've started working with teachers in my district doing some training in CI. And that's like when I introduce that concept, that U-shaped concept, there's inevitably a handful of teachers in the group that are like, "Are you serious? Is that right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's
Yep.
right. This is proven, like data, it's there. It's been there. We just have to understand it." And they're like, "So when my level ones go and the teacher's like, why didn't you teach them anything? It's not my fault." And I'm like, "No, it's not your fault."
No. And it's something I'll tell you one thing that helped me become a better CI teacher or a language teacher in general. I don't have kids, so I wasn't exposed to seeing how the language developed firsthand. But with my niece and my nephew, I saw it. I used to harp on way back when, in the beginning years of CI, even when my kids would forget the verb, especially the verb is, they would forget it, leave it
Mhm.
out. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, there are very few languages that can do what Spanish can do. You can have a one word sentence in Spanish, and you can't in most languages I know, you can't because you need at least a subject and a verb. But the subject and a verb are mixed together in Spanish. We don't have to write the subject, it's built into
Yeah.
the verb. So you can have a one word sentence, but it has to be the dang verb. You can't leave that one out. So when they would start doing that and go, she, pretty, boy, tall. I'd like, dang it, you need the verb. You got to have the verb. You can't take a sentence without a verb. And then I watched my niece and nephew. They do that you, just like you said. They started right in the beginning, and as a baby, they would use the is, but then it would drop out and leave
Mhm.
out, and then it would come back. And then Bill Van Patten, I mean, I didn't learn about Bill Van Patten until late 2000s. Um,
Yeah.
so with Stephen Krashen, said this was going to happen, and then Bill Van Patten said The reason why that happens is, especially with the verb is, it has no meaning. There is no meaning. What does is look like? There's no meaning to it. It's an abstract verb, so it's not necessary for communication. In fact, the Semitic languages, Arabic, Hebrew, Maltese,
Mhm.
they don't even have a verb for is. They leave it out completely. It doesn't even exist because it doesn't hold any meaning. She says any verb that doesn't hold meaning drops out before it comes back in. And so that ding, 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 ding. So learning about second language acquisition and then seeing it firsthand or secondhand in my niece and nephew really helped me understand what my kids are going through in class a lot better.
Mhm. I
And I
agree,
think
yeah.
we are natural language teachers as humans. And then we go to college to become a language teacher and they beat that out of us. But really
Uh-huh.
being a mother or a father to a kid who you've taught them their first language, that's what we're supposed to be doing in our classrooms. That
Yeah.
works, and we know that works because it's worked hundreds of thousands of times over hundreds of thousands of years.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Well, we're just about our end of our time, so thank you so much. It's been so interesting talking about you. If people want to connect with you, how can they connect with you?
Um, well, I am in the major Facebook groups, um, and I mean, I'm happy to offer my email. I'm on Instagram.
What's your
Um,
Instagram handle? I'll put that up there for everybody.
oh gosh, that's a good question. I don't do as much on Instagram,
Oh,
but I do check Instagram. I definitely check Instagram because that's where my children post things. So I have to be adept enough there. Um, let's see. Where do I? Oh, it's there. Um, it's Lynne Redinger Hendrick is the name that it's under, but it's LMH Girls.
okay, so let me put that up there. See if that comes up right when I put it up there.
Yep, that is
Okay,
right. Yeah.
awesome. So I thank you so much for speaking with us today. And I always forget this, so I got to mention it before I forget. If you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe so that we can get this out to more teachers. If you enjoyed this, share it with some other teacher who can learn from it as well. Um, Senorita Thornton put in here, thank you for the kind presentation. You are absolutely welcome, Senorita Thornton. We're glad you are joining us today, so thank you so much. If you're watching this on the replay, feel free to put your questions in the comments. I will pass them along to Lynn so that she can answer them for you. Um, we
Happily.
have I got to see when our next one is, our next CI stories. Let me see my calendar here. Bear with me while I take a look. Um, is Gregory Schwab on the 24th of April is our next one, 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. So that'll be our next one. You can catch us live on Tuesdays, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. And I hope to see all of you next time. Thank you so much for being with us, Lynn, today.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You as well.